Live.
Okay, thanks everybody for joining. Before we approve the agenda as per the agenda that Cindy sent out last week, we have some news about our new committee member, Brad. Cindy, did you want to relate that?
Thank you, Chairman Jackson. Unfortunately, Brad is unable to accept the position with the committee. So I think if the committee agrees, we can do an advertisement and do a posting to try to fill the vacancy.
Okay, and that's is that the process, or is there other applicants that were not selected originally that we could draw from?
There is one applicant that was left. So if the committee agrees, we can definitely reach out to that applicant and see if they're interested.
Okay, so would we complete that process now, Cindy, Yvette? Or do we need to do a more formal process in order to resolve that issue?
I can answer this if you want, Yvette. If the committee feels comfortable, we can definitely reach out to the applicant to see if they're interested.
Okay.
And then if they're not, we can just run an ad if the committee gives me that authorization.
Okay, so for the committee to approve, then obviously we need to know who that applicant is.
It has to go to council first, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Similar to before, right? You guys did not know who the applicants were. You kind of left it with me to take it to council to make the decision, and then I brought back the recommendation. So if you can leave that within our powers again, I can probably whip up a quick report to add it to this agenda if we want to move that quickly. And then if the candidate isn't successful, we'll go from there.
Okay, so do we need a motion to initiate that process then?
I think we just gave me direction last time.
I think it was direction. I don't think you need a motion.
Yeah, I agree.
Everybody's okay with that on the committee?
Yeah.
Sorry, what happened with Brad? He was offered and declined?
Unfortunately, due to personal reasons, yes, he's unable to accept the position. Yeah. I do believe we'll probably see his name again. It was just unfortunate this round.
Okay, so any comments from the committee then in order to initiate that process as just described by Ms. Page and Ms. Hurley? No? All right, great, thank you. So let's move to the approval of the agenda. So everybody again should have a copy of the agenda sent last week. Thank you very much, Ms. Page. Does anybody have any comments, additions to the agenda? No? Okay, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Moved by John Follis.
Seconded
I'll second.
by Mr. Frizzle. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. Okay, wonderful. Okay, the minutes of our meeting held April 26th. Again, thank you, Ms. Page, for sending those out to us. Does anybody have any comments, additions, omissions, edits to the minutes of our April 26th meeting?
I just noticed a little typo. I think it was in the trail report with Grand Trunk. I think there was a typo there.
Yes, it was the grant as opposed to grand. Thank you very much. I'll make that change.
No problem.
Okay, any other comments or edits to the minutes? Okay, motion. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
On motion.
Hillary, seconded by
John Follis will do it again.
Lois, and all in favor?
Yes.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, let's move on to section 7 reports, the financial report. Ms. Alls.
Through you, Chairman Jackson, I believe Ms. Ells is muted.
Melissa, you're muted.
Melissa, you're muted. There she goes.
There you go.
Sorry. So as I was saying, from now on, I'll be doing the financial report each month. And as of last month, there is no budget activity. There is something, we had a question, there was $300 allocated for memberships. Is that something you guys have a membership to, or was it for something specific?
I believe this is a question that came up a few months ago, if I remember. So yeah, I think the committee decided that there was that we weren't going to proceed with that membership, as we haven't paid it in a few years. Is that correct?
It is correct through you, Chairman Jackson. And we also rolled it into the materials and supplies. Sorry, Melissa, that we should have given you an update on that.
Okay.
So that $300 just has been rolled up to materials and supplies instead of using, I think it was the Ontario Trails membership, I think is what it was historically. So that's all just a combined budget now.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. So no financial activity for this month. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So we will talk about some expenditures later in general business. So that's great. Any questions from Melissa on that? If I could ask you if anybody does have a question or a comment, if you could verbally speak it, just because it's sometimes hard on Zoom to see everybody. Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much for that. Meredith, update from Orca.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and also thank you for resending me the Zoom link. I appreciate that. I don't have a whole lot to report. I did want to let you know that the kiosk, the signage at the mill, I'm just reading an email. I did ask our communications staff about that this morning, but the Hope Mill volunteers haven't been able to work on the structure during the stay-at-home order. So we don't have a completion date for that at this time. But I can certainly keep you informed once one is determined, but yeah, they haven't been able to access the mill. I also wanted to let you know, we've been doing a lot of virtual education programs through the Pathway to Stewardship program. And one of the ambassador schools is Millbrook South Cavan. So I've incorporated a number of pictures of the Millbrook Valley trails into the presentation when we're talking about the importance of habitat and wildlife corridors and access to nature and things like that. And it's great. As soon as I put those pictures up, all of the kids in the classes get excited and say, I've been there, I know that place. So you certainly have a lot of keen trail enthusiasts at Millbrook South Cavan. So that's great. And finally, I wanted to just ask how the tree planting went.
It went well. It was mostly me and Rob, and the trees that I grabbed, I put mostly along Station Trail, so that in future they'll screen the trail from the public yard. We went straight into a heat wave as soon as everything was planted, of course. So I ended up going back to water every morning because, you know, full on sun, full on heat. And things are starting to green up now. I'm down to watering once every, I don't know, 3 or 4 days, depending on the weather. Not at all during this cold snap. So everything looks happy and the sticks are starting to leaf out. So that's nice to see.
That's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next time you're out, take a selfie of yourself with one of the trees, please, and send it to me, and we can add it to our tree planting social media. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think that is all I have for my report, unless there are any questions.
Any questions for Meredith? No. Okay, great. Thanks, Meredith.
Thank you.
Char report, Maureen.
Okay, so for that, I have to, oh my gosh, where is it? How do I make this smaller so I can see what I had? Sorry. I am so impaired.
That's okay. You could just read it. I don't know that we need to see it.
Yeah, I can't. The thing is, I can't see it myself because I can't get behind this screen. Exit full screen. Here we go. Okay. You can still hear me, but I can find my report. Okay. So in general, the trails are much drier now, thankfully. So with regard to Meds Mountain Trail, seeding is required on the field by the pond. The nylon burlap from the hydroseeding fabric on the berm near the dam is now a trip hazard and needs to be cut off and removed. The first boardwalk on Lower Med is increasingly
Actually,
aged.
Maureen, maybe I'll just interrupt you there. Maybe that's a question for Meredith.
Okay.
So yeah, the seeding that was put down last year as the hydroseeding fabric, as Maureen states, so it's really gone wild, particularly on that new berm that was built last fall to the east of the dam, and it is a major tripping hazard. So I'm not sure if that is Orca's responsibility or if that is the township's, but it should be removed as soon as possible.
Just for clarification, the berm should be removed or the vegetation on the berm?
No, the hydroseeding fabric. So when the hydroseeded it, now the hydroseeding fabric is now blowing in the wind and creating, if you walk over it, you trip and fall.
Okay, did they use kind of that thin nylon mesh?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, and that, okay. All right, I can let Dan know that is there. Should Dan follow up with Yvette or yourself?
I could actually take a picture of it and send it to Meredith, and then you could send that to Dan, and then he'd be clear on what's needed.
Okay, that would be wonderful.
Pretty obvious.
Okay.
Did Dan lay the fabric down, Meredith? Is that who did the work?
No, I imagine the hydroseeding company did, but I haven't been involved in that aspect of anything. So that's why I thought I'll funnel this back to Dan to respond.
All right. So if you need my assistance, by all means, tell Dan just to reach out to myself.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Super.
Thank you. And thank you for the photo, Maureen.
No problem. And I'll take pictures of the area that needs seeding as well. Whose responsibility was that going to be? Was that going to be Orca or was that going to be the township?
I don't know.
I don't know neither because I wasn't involved in it. So maybe
we can facilitate a conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think we'll take this offside. So we'll talk to Dan and see what he says. And then between us, we'll figure it out. And Melissa, I'll include you in that conversation so that you're aware of what's going on.
Okay. So I'll send pictures all around then.
Thank you.
Okay. So now getting into just beyond the trailhead on Lower Med, Baxter Creek, that first boardwalk is increasingly aged and will need repair, particularly the cornered wedged pieces. You know, they're aging quite badly. They're getting rounded and they're kind of rocking on their nails. The long curved boardwalk has a long depressed section that we've known about for a while, and it's in urgent need of repair. On the west landing from the T-junction boardwalk, there are two lengths of O-ring and the rubber waffle, I forget what we call those things, they were big waffly rubber things that we put down to reduce
slipping
mud. Yeah,
the mud and the slipping.
Yeah, they're now badly exposed and need either wood chips or more packed earth or something. The O-rings now would represent a trip hazard when they're in shadow. The route staircase to the lookout needs some flagstone on its lower landing. So these are just routes that we use to climb up to the lookout, but the lowest landing of that staircase is often very, very muddy, and it's causing people to actually go around the staircase. So I think if we put some flagstone there, it would probably prevent people doing that. The trail book at the lookout has not been in use since COVID started, and I'm wondering if we should start again. Leaving people to think about that for a bit, because depending on the general mood in the village, sometimes what's written in the lookout book is absolutely delightful and various, and everyone from small kids to, you know, old hikers and cyclists using the book, and sometimes drawing beautiful pictures, but sometimes there's a little bit of a, I guess it's sort of people let their fuses blow in the book about things they're angry about. So I was a little bit hesitant to put it up again. But I'm willing to if people think it would be a good idea, because it has been a lovely tradition up there. People race to the top to see what's in the book. Upper Med is in good shape throughout. Baxter Creek Trail is formally closed beyond the T Junction Boardwalk because of the beaver activity, and the signs are being better respected now that they are formally signed, that it's formally signed. Although there are some users who are too adventurous to be dissuaded. The floating bridge is floating, but also starting to flounder in some sections. The trail is dry and bush hogged all the way to the new dam. Before formal reopening, many broken boards in all the long boardwalks will need repair. Adventurous hikers have been crossing to the north side of the creek on the old dam, which is now breaking down. I didn't walk past the Beaver Dam or Lodge from the east, and I went to the fairgrounds and re-entered Baxter Creek Trail from the fairground entrance. The staircase and John Selleck Bridge are in good shape. Going east along the closed trail, it's much drier now until the new Beaver Lodge. And thankfully, we haven't, despite all the beaver activity, we haven't lost a whole lot of vegetation, by the way. The creek's definitely backed up, and there are some bays and certainly some very active channels with currents running freely through them. But that beautiful area with the big knee branch in the tree and the bench and the ferns, that's all still totally intact, and hopefully that'll stay that way. The fairgrounds entrance itself off Main Street, the trail users enter at their own risk. Sign is up, and a surveillance camera warning sign is up just where you're entering the fairgrounds themselves. The trailhead needs a new Millbrook Valley Trails pamphlet dispenser, and I think I might have one here somewhere, so I'll see if I can find it.
I've got lots of them.
Okay. The new trail along the north bank of Baxter Creek is coming along very nicely. There's a nice new lookout with chairs at the Oxbow where a small footbridge could take the curious over to the south trail, and a full panoramic face-on view of the Beaver Dam. It still needs pickup of old fair trash and disposal of rusty old household dump items off trail. And it definitely needs a new bridge to the south bank, because that old Beaver Dam isn't going to do it much longer. Heading south from the fairgrounds entrance, Baxter Creek Trail is in good shape, and it's well bush hogged throughout. The rediscovered and reopened loop to the Millbrook Valley Trail bench does need MVT signage, unless we want to keep it kind of secret, I don't know. The fourth line trail is bush hogged, but does need some shrubs and small fallen tree removal near the O-ring and gravel work section that was done a couple years ago. And that section is otherwise holding up well. It seems to be doing what it's supposed to do in terms of keeping the area fairly dry. And of course, because there weren't snowmobiles through that area, there isn't the amount of snowmobile damage that is often done to that boardwalk this year. So there are some loose boards, and someone going through with a hammer and nails would find some work to do. But in general, that boardwalk is better than it has been in other springs. The boardwalk from the fourth line to the first M&R pond has been repaired and is much more functional. I'm noticing that that area is now wetter even in a drought period than it was. The conifers in that area, sorry for the typo, are dropping needles at their bottom. And so I'm thinking it's probably pretty quite a bit more swampy than it used to be. And we might anticipate that there may need to be some floating sections there in the future. The M&R entrance and driveway, that large dead tree has been removed. The fishing platform is intact except one broken slat. The access ramp needs to be reinforced at the shoulders and resurfaced, and it's well bush hogged throughout. What was I going to say there as well? I forgot to mention again this year, because of the drought, we're really vulnerable to ants in all of the wooden dispensers again. So I'll go around and put some borax powder in them. It helps keep the pamphlets dry at the bottom as well. And the stool, the poop bag dispensers, it helps keep them dry as well. Grand Trunk pathway is muddy past the last raised narrow boardwalk, and a diversion trail has happened there. And so I was wondering whether we should just allow that to stay, or whether more raised narrow boardwalk would be a good idea. But otherwise, Grand Trunk is in good shape.
Maureen, I can just comment on that.
Mhm.
That area is always particularly wet in the spring.
Mhm.
And it does dry out, and then once it's dry, it stays dry until the following spring. I did close off that shortcut. Well, I put some logs in front of it, and I went in with a trail tool and leveled the ruts and the footprints that were in the muddy area now that it's starting to dry. So it should just start to get reused again, and hopefully people stop using the shortcut. But the question remains about what to do for next spring. Do we just let it happen again and then, repair or whatever? Or do we take some sort of measure to deal with the mud?
Right.
For this year, we're good, but we should figure out a long-term solution.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Cedar Trail is holding up well. The east end of the step bridge could use a bit of flagstone too, like the west side. Not as much flagstone, but just a little bit to prevent muddy landing on the east side. The rail bed is badly gouged by foot traffic heading down the route staircase to the railway bridge, and it does need to be filled in and supported in some way.
So I've purchased some 6x6 to do that, and some rebar in order to drive that in, and then we can fill it in with gravel. So we have the materials. It's just more of a matter of when we'll be able to head out there in multiple numbers. It's more than a one-person job.
Yeah, it is. So Meadow Trail is holding up really well all the way to Elgar. The Dial detour is drying out nicely after being really muddy in April. Gani Transit is in really good shape throughout. That whole flagstone area, I mean, it's really beautiful. What was at times a very boggy part of the walk and a little bit messy has become one of the most beautiful sections of the walk. So generally speaking, the trails are now dry and firmly packed. They're also very well used and very much appreciated by local and visiting pedestrian, dog walking, and mountain biking users. This season was the best spring ephemeral flower variety I've ever seen on the trails. Unfortunately, if you look up when you're out there, Gypsy Moth is affecting about 1/3 of the deciduous tree species in the canopy. And I am worried about what that's going to mean. So I'll report the annual DSV and poison ivy status separately, formally. I'm not quite finished it because it only started emerging really last week. And it's going gangbusters now. However, we're making really good progress adjacent the trails themselves. There's very little growth right on the trails. there are still quite large islands of growth that were hidden to me until I really got deep in behind all the conifers. And it is worth getting rid of those because of the dispersal of seeds, particularly of DSV. Poison ivy we leave alone beyond several feet from the trail because the deer like it and other things eat it as well. But we just don't want people stepping off trail to pee or stepping off trail to pass somebody, especially during COVID time, and then finding themselves with poison ivy when they get home. We happen to have so many 3-leafed plants on our trails, so it makes it harder for unfamiliar people to identify poison ivy. I'm forever running into people calling Jack in the Pulpit poison ivy before it flowers, or even Trillium poison ivy, and being afraid to step off to pee. Even it might even be worthwhile from an educational standpoint, labeling poison ivy in 1 or 2 sections and just letting it grow within 3 feet of the trail, just to show people what it actually looks like. Because these aren't the only trails that people are using.
Okay.
Yeah, but do you want me to do the DSB conversation with Sean Gillen now? I've actually already talked to him and told him that I thought the same amount would probably be.
Let's touch on some of your reports first. So before we go into specifically the stuff that needs to be done on Meds Mountain Trail, John Frizzle, do you want to talk about what you did last week?
Sure. Yeah, some of the boardwalk sections that were popping up that they do every spring, Maureen, with the boards. I've gone in and replaced a number of boards in a few different sections, and we've decided to replace any of the, I guess they call it duck walk or lengthwise boards with horizontal boards, because they're much stronger, hold up over time better. I know it takes more wood, but it's a lot less replacement. So as we've been going through, we've been taking out some sections, and you'll see that reworked through there. And there was a section of boardwalk also that it kind of had a little bit bigger step up. So we've just extended it a bit on Baxter Creek, made it a little longer to stay out of the mud, and made it a little smoother for people getting up onto. So you'll probably see, I think there's like maybe 1 or 2 more boards that we need a little adjustment. So I'll take care of those over the next week or so. I'm thinking, I know Dave, there's a few tweaks that you may have done as well. I think just some spots that we noticed that needed a little smoothing on, I guess it was cedar that kind of made it a little smoother coming down there. Just little adjustments, just to make things a little nicer for everybody going through.
Great. Yeah, thanks very much for all that work.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so a couple things.
One other thing, the stairs you may notice coming down from the fairgrounds. There was one board that was put the opposite way of all the other ones, and it was a bit of a trip hazard. So I smoothed that out. Hopefully you notice it if you're hiking down those stairs. And the bench, so nobody's surprised, has just been kind of moved off the trail. What we found was happening was many people were kind of using that as a little swimming hole there. And people were sitting really and putting all their stuff right in the middle of the trail. So it's still there. It's just maybe moved about 15 feet or so off to the side. And in that way, when people are coming through, if family is sitting on the bench, you're not like, how do I get around this family without, blazing a new trail through the bush and keeping your social distancing and things like that. So some people may notice that, and there's a reason for that. We wanted to encourage families to be able to use that spot, but then not block the whole route of the trail for everybody else to be able to get through as well. That's it, Rob.
Thank you. Okay, so on Baxter Creek Trail, as you noted, the O-pipe is on Meds Mountain Trail. On the west landing from the G Junction Boardwalk, 2 lengths of the O-ring and the rubber waffle badly exposed. and we need wood chips. So that's a large job to bring the wood chips in that long. I think we're covered okay because that section of the trail is currently closed, and those and is noted as such. But we will get to that when we can. And the first boardwalk and the large long curved boardwalk need to be repaired. The first boardwalk needs to be replaced, probably, as you said. Again, that's a multi-person job, so we can talk about that later, 8.10, when we talk about workday. And I've been trying to get to the depressed section on the curved S boardwalk, but again, it's a multi-person job, and my kids aren't big or strong enough to be able to help me with that. So I'm trying to get Kirk to help me, but it's just getting mutual times that work together. But that is going to be addressed. It's just very difficult right now when we're able to go out and do this together.
Rob?
Yeah.
So I meant to jump in on your previous point, but I was too slow on the unmute button there. The Big O pipe and the soil stabilizer in that one spot, I don't know that spot's actually muddy anymore. We've got 2 stretches of Big O, and it'd be interesting to see if they're actually functioning anymore, because springs seem to change out in that area, and it's possible that those pieces are no longer needed. So it would be worth taking a look to see if there's water at either end of them. It's probably something when we did a work day back in April one year that it was particularly wet, and we thought that was a solution, but maybe it's just the nature of April trail conditions.
Yeah, I'd be maybe hesitant to move them though, in case it did come back. At least we've got the infrastructure in place, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, we can discuss when we have a more formal work day.
Okay. Or just temporarily remove and stash nearby until we know we need them again, if they're a trip hazard.
Yeah, but my thinking is if we remove them, then we've got 2 big divots in the ground that we need to fill in somehow anyway, right?
Okay, well, I could handle that with a trail tool pretty quickly.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, okay. Well, let's pick that up at 8.10. Okay, in terms of the comment about the brochure dispensers and the brochures, we're out of brochures. We've had a very busy season with all the hot weather the last few weeks. So I've ordered some more brochures. Hopefully they'll be here in the next few days. Dave, that correction has been made on the pamphlets about the bicycles that you brought to my attention. So the new pamphlets and every pamphlet printed from here on in, we'll have that correction. Again, we're still waiting on printing a large batch of these pamphlets, because we want to coordinate it with the trailhead design and the online maps, which we'll discuss again later on in the meeting today. 8.8 GIS MBT mapping. Okay, Maureen, if you want to talk about your conversations with Sean and the DSV and Poison Ivy Spring.
Yeah, so he agreed, that we're getting a fairly representative view of what's going to be happening this summer now. But now that we've had one rain, it's probably worth waiting another week to find out what that brings forth in the way of DSV before I decide where to use this year's allotment of funds. But he agreed, given what he saw last year, that approximately the same amount of money from the committee would do the job for the year.
And can you remind us what that was?
I'm
1,000 or 1,500?
You think I remember? It was somewhere between $1,000 and $1,300.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he's going to have, a more formal quote for us when? For the July meeting, we'll have that?
Well, he'll need to spray before then, because he has to spray while the weather is below 30 degrees, ideally, because the pores in the leaves contract to prevent transpiration when it's too hot, and then the herbicide doesn't actually get into the plant.
Okay,
So
so do you
we
know?
will actually be needing to spray before the end of June likely. So we need to make our decision. We have a very contracted spring now. This is the thing. Things are sprouting, growing, actively
We know
growing.
when he's going to be able to
Right.
provide us with a quote.
Yeah, he just said, give me the same amount of money and I'll make it work for you. And I think that's a good way of doing it.
Okay.
I think actually next year we may see quite a jump in what we need because of the opening of the canopy due to the gypsy moth, because that's going to allow some shafts of light deeper into the forest, and we're going to see a lot more DSV growth.
Okay, Ms. Page, are you able to check on that, what that expenditure was last year?
Yeah, I'll bring it back to you. I'll keep looking through my Gmail.
No, but Cindy, do you have that figure at hand by chance?
Through you, Chairman, I have two questions. I don't really understand the terminology that we're using. I understand poison ivy, but I don't know what the other term is. And if I can get Sean or Sean's name or whatever the company is, I can quickly do a quick search offline while we're on our call. But I don't know what the company name is, and I don't know what the acronym is that we're referring to. Okay,
so DSV is dog strangling vine.
Okay.
Yeah. And Sean is SEAN, and Gillen is his last name, GILLEN. And his company is Ironwood Property Maintenance.
Okay, I've got the invoice here for 2020. It was $1,000 with 130 HST for a total of $1,130.
Okay, there you go.
There you go. That makes life easier.
Thank you.
That was July. That was posted July 3rd, 2020. Okay, so did you want to initiate a motion then, Maureen?
Yes, I would move that we again engage Sean Dillon of Ironwood Property Maintenance to do DSV and or poison ivy spraying where required throughout the Millbrook Valley Trails property.
Okay. Maybe before I get a seconder on that, could I ask Melissa to maybe tell us what we have in our budget? Because I don't think that was mentioned. You're on mute.
Yes, so you had 6,300 and the only thing that's been spent is $301.92.
Okay, thank you. Can I receive a seconder for Maureen's motion?
Should we specify the amount?
I was just going to say, are you going to do an upset limit through you, Chairman Jackson, of $1,200 or the $1,130? What you just said, I was going to be my question as well.
Yeah. So last year's invoice was $1,000 with HST. It was $1,130. And so Maureen, to clarify, Sean said he would be able to work within that same parameter of money for this year. Okay. So
Yeah.
Why don't we say specifically then $1,130, including HST?
That's great. I should say I'm going to try my hardest to do anything that's immediately adjacent to the trails themselves manually, because it's mostly singletons and clusters of DSV, and there's very little poison ivy, at least out now. And I'm thinking that the islands that are deep within the plantation forest are so far away from the trails that we may not have to close the trails at all. That's my hope, that we won't have a day or two down of downtime on the trails.
Okay, thank you. So back to the motion. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it, Mr. Chairman. John Follis.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passed. All right, thank you very much, Maureen. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay,
Chairman Jackson, just for clarification, are you just going to forward me Maureen's report? My intent is just to copy and paste its entirety right into the minutes.
you didn't get it from Maureen?
No, she said it wasn't able to
Yeah.
come because of a Gmail account or something. I'm not sure exactly what that was.
Yeah,
Okay.
somehow the way I was sending it required the recipients to have a Google account. I don't know quite why that is.
Okay, it's sent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to section 8. General business. 8.1, proposed new connection trail Tower Hill North development. We spoke about this at our April meeting. The draft letter. I assume, Matt, that's over to you.
It could be. I haven't drafted the letter, Rob. I didn't think that was in my purview. We had a conversation a bit about the content, but I don't have a draft letter.
Okay, sorry. So is that, was I supposed to do that?
I thought that's how we left it. But
Okay, all right. My apologies. It's been a busy month.
Nope.
Okay, so let me draft something up this week. And I will distribute it to yourself first, or should just distribute it to the group as a whole?
just send it en masse to everyone, and we can provide feedback. But it'd be good to get this letter done and dusted to the powers that be sooner than later. So yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay, all right. I'll get on that in the next couple of days.
Yeah. And with regards to 8.2, Rob, while we're there, we weren't able to meet, and I'll take the heat for that one. That was my unavailability, but we will endeavor to have a meeting next month.
Okay, great. All right, so that moves on to 8.3, updated signage on Ganney Transit. Dave, I think that's you. You're on mute. There you go.
All right. Well, Matthew and I just talked about this a little bit since the last meeting, and then I said I'd get back to him, and then I didn't. So, but I think the solution is that our signage isn't great, and it may be redundant at this point. So we first put our signage up when we were essentially creating a back door into the Ganaraska, and they didn't have any signage. Since that time, any entrances off our trail into the forest now have Ganaraska signs saying that permits are required and all of that. So if we wanted to replace our signs, maybe Matthew and I can actually just have that conversation. But I think what I'm thinking now is that we just might say that continuing on our trail will eventually lead you to the Ganaraska forest, and please obey all trail signage or something like that. Something simple. But as it stands right now, I do find it a bit confusing, and so maybe I'll continue that conversation with Matthew. But perhaps we could create an upset limit for new signage while we're here.
Okay.
If everyone's in agreement with that. So I mean, there are currently 2 signs. One that's like a heads up. You using this trail, you will eventually get to the Ganaraska, and then the other one is at the end of our trail, which says you're now at the end of our trail. But at the same time, at that location, the Ganaraska has their own signs saying you're now entering the Ganaraska forest. So we may just want to replace one of them that says something along the lines of what I had just said. So that's probably a $50 sign or less. And so if I wanted to make a motion for an upset limit, I guess I'd be looking at $100 plus tax. So let's just say $115 for 1 or 2 new signs as needed.
Through you, Rob, Mr. Chair, is Dave, just a question, just something more welcoming you're looking for, just something that's not overlapping with what the Ganaraska already has. Is that your thinking there?
Oh yeah, sorry. I guess there was a bit of a brief at the end of the last meeting, maybe.
Yep. Okay, I missed that. Sorry.
Yeah, it's at the Fire Route 310 crossing.
Gotcha.
And so one of the problems is that it's all caps, so it's a bit difficult to read.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found is that people think that then marks the beginning of the Ganaraska property.
Okay.
Because they're not reading it carefully, and so we just want something more clear, maybe more concise, that just says you're free to continue.
Right.
But this will eventually go to the Ganaraska, and then you are to follow their rules.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just more.
Also, being all caps, it's not AODA compliant either. So there's a lot of, that was one of the components, David, we'll have that conversation about. But yeah, I don't think there'll be more than one sign if one sign's even required. So we'll have that conversation. I don't think there's much in the way of urgency with regards to the matter, especially now given the signage from the Ganaraska. Is that accurate, Dave?
I think so. I would just maybe look for the go ahead to take down the existing sign.
Sure.
That's what bugs me. So.
Yeah, fair enough. Well then, yeah, like I'm not even sure it will be necessary to replace the one given the Ganaraska signs, but if you want the upset limit, I mean, like I said, the $70 or $100, I shouldn't be an issue.
Okay. So should we set that limit then? Just to have it? Should I? I'll make that motion then.
Yep, great.
Okay.
I'll second that if you feel you need it, or if it's, more welcoming without it. Either way, we have the option, but I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? No, okay, can I get a yay or nay on that motion, please?
Yay.
Yay.
Okay, motion passed. Great. Thank you very much. Okay, the next 4 items on the agenda are, I think, driven by me. So 8.4, Hope Mill wood order. We have not ordered any wood from Hope Mill since 2019, obviously last year because of COVID. As John mentioned, he did some work on the trails last week. I was at the yard today. And we've got about 24 boards left. So as such, I have placed an order with Hope Mill for 150 boards. Usually we get 100 boards, but because we haven't had any in 2 years, I placed an order for 150 based on the agreement of the committee here. Now, in speaking with Ken Prairie, who runs Hope Mill, it's my understanding that they have not been able to cut, of course, because of the stay-at-home order. And so he was unsure whether or not they'd be able to cut 150 pieces for us, because, of course, we don't know when this order is going to recede and what's going to happen. But I'm in touch with them, and I don't know, Meredith, if you have any other information on what's happening with Hope.
No, the same as you, that they're waiting till the stay-at-home order is lifted and then the further guidance on the plan for reopening.
Exactly. So, okay. So in terms of prices, they didn't think that prices would change much. So I'm just going back and looking, and I think, we got 110 pieces in 2019, and that was $1,500 all in. So one would imagine that 150 pieces would bring us closer to the $2,000 mark. But that is yet to be determined, and whether or not, again, if they'll even be able to meet that order. But I wanted to get some thoughts, comments from the committee. Is this something that we want to go ahead with? Certainly we need wood. We've got, once we're able to, and obviously complete our workday, we've got a lot of projects on the go as per our lack of being able to do much over the last 18 months. And just Maureen's Maureen's comments on the trail reports as the previous trail reports have been over the past year and a half. So any thoughts on that? Oh, good. So do we want to say 150 pieces? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we've got a nice safe place to store it. It's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
So,
okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say even more, like if it's just thinking if the trail does reopen, we've got an item on here about a bridge, like if it's,
yeah, no, we need it for sure.
If we get to a point where we have all of a sudden a lot of repairs to do in a short time, we don't want to be waiting on wood.
Yeah, And if things work out better than expected, then we can look at increasing that wood order possibly as well. I know, Dave, you had mentioned that the contribution that was made by the Millbrook Valley, the Millbrook Mountain Bike Trail Club, you'd like to see that go towards a wood order as well. So
Yeah, I'd be happy with that.
okay, so why don't we leave it as this? Let's Ken knows that you know, that we'll want some wood, and they've got a bunch of other orders and not just ours. So we're going to meet again in June. But I'm hoping that before then we'll all have an idea of when and if they're able to start work and prices. So I can certainly convey that to the group over email. But I think I'm hoping we'll have a much better idea of quantity, prices, and timings for our June meeting. So I propose that we just sort of leave it till then. They're not going to leave us in the lurch, and they know that we want the wood, and they'll cut it regardless of whether or not we've set an upset limit or anything like that. So if everybody's okay with that, we'll just move on. Good. Okay, wonderful. 8.5, pedestrian access from Ann Street. So we touched on this before a few months ago. Dave and John have done a lot of great work on rerouting the trail because of the Beaver Dam, and it now skirts sort of the bottom of Ann Street. So there had been along the fairgrounds, where then it meets up with the current fairgrounds trail right at the bottom of the hill. Because of the fact that the fairgrounds now seem to be kind of locked down because of their sort of liability issues, and I'll speak to that here in a minute around 8.7. It's a long haul for people sort of in the mid of the village to walk up to the end of Main Street to access the fairgrounds trail, and or walk down to the dam and hit Meds Park and go into the trail from there. So there was the thought that we could, if it was possible from a geographical sense, I suppose, make a potential access to the new trail at the end of Ann Street. Now, for those of you that are aware, it's quite a steep grade. There's a lot of glass there from history past, I guess it being a dumping ground or something. But I thought it might make a bit of a nice access sort of mid-village, as I say, and allow people to get in and out and maybe do a bit of a quicker loop even, from just being able to do the loop at Meds. So just to that end, if that's something that people think might be a possibility, I'm just sort of looking for maybe 2 or 3 people to go out with me one afternoon, one evening, and sort of explore the possibility. I've been out a couple of times, and I think it's possible with some switchbacks and a bit of cleaning up, which I'd like to see at that location anyway. But I think we still need to really identify where that trail is going to go, and maybe more specifically where that bridge crossing is going to go, as per our previous conversations, Dave. So what do people think of that, just at a very high level, and would you like to maybe do a bit of a social distance recce out there one evening in the not too distant future to see what's possible?
I think it's a great idea, Rob, and I'm happy to help.
Okay, great.
Robert, can you explain to me exactly where you're speaking of, like what entrance in you're talking about?
So really, that it's right at the end of Ann Street, where the road allowance just sort of goes in and sort of drops off the cliff, so to speak.
Okay, so I would like to take part in that then, if you're going to go and do a walk.
Sure.
I think we just need to clarify ownership. That's a sensitive area for everyone. So maybe we just, maybe someone should represent the township. We should probably take a walk on that with you.
Okay. Okay.
And you mentioned about the fairgrounds. Was there a problem with entrance from the fairgrounds? Did you have an issue or anything, Robert?
Well, no, with it, I mean, I've got a bit of an issue with the signage, but we could speak about that in a minute. But it was more to the fact that you used to be able to cut through the fairgrounds.
Right, I remember.
Where the mailboxes are.
Yeah.
sort of be able to walk through the fairgrounds, and now that's all sort of locked up tight. And so people then need to walk all the way up Ann Street and down Main Street to be able to access the trails.
Is there a reason why it's locked up did you get some notice? I'm just not aware of anything, that's all.
Yeah, so in speaking with Ms. Post at the Agricultural Society, they're saying it's because of a liability issue, hence the need for the new signage.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so let me organize something here in the next little while, and I'll include Yvette and Mr. Frizzle and anybody else that wants to come. I'll send an email out. Matt, was that your hand? Did you want to say something?
Yeah, well, we just know this is going to be a contentious issue with the conversation we've already had with the rerouting and the one resident that's going to be directly impacted as well, right? So this was part of the conversation we had previously about when new networks or linkages or connections, or I think an entrance would be probably not fulfilled with our language of a linkage per se. I mean, maybe it could, depending on your lawyer, but anyways, it's just going to be an additional sensitivity that we'll have to be conscientious of, because whereas at the one side of the fairgrounds property, I know there's a couple of residences there, but there is more, I would argue, availability of side street parking for residents that are driving to then walk the trails. And there really isn't a ton of that. You'd be right in front of people's front yards doing that at Ann Street where we're discussing it. So there's considerations there, but I'm sure Yvette will be aware of those and representing the municipality when she attends the review of that area.
That's one of the reasons why I suggested that I attend. We also have an agreement with the Fair Board to allow access to there. So that's maybe another sidebar conversation we have with regards to not permitting us access from the fairgrounds as well.
Well, no, so to clarify that, on your last point, the fair, you're still able to access the trails at the end of Main Street on fairgrounds property.
Okay.
Previous ability to be able to access mid fairgrounds property, right where the main entrance is during fair time and where the Canada Post office boxes are now,
Yeah.
right where the old playground used to be.
Yes.
That entrance is now inaccessible.
So that property is actually, depending upon where we're thinking, but that property is owned by the township.
Right. Okay.
So I just think we should have further conversation with
Sure.
regards to them not granting, because we do have an arrangement with them. So we'll just, maybe that's we have that conversation, we have that walk, we can sort of talk about it at that time where specifically you're speaking of, and then I can actually pull up the mapping and understand where we're at. That's all.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
And to address Matthew's other concern, I'm obviously well aware of those concerns as well, having been involved. But at this point, again, this is purely exploratory,
Yep.
right? Just seeing what's possible. We're not proposing that this is going to happen. Obviously, we would follow the procedures laid out and go through those processes should we decide to proceed.
No problem.
I was thinking, Rob, that the end of N, isn't that approximately where we would be bringing all the old household items that were dumped there up? Like, wouldn't we be,
Yes.
putting pickup trucks at the end of the street and filling them full of old stoves and
Hopefully.
broken glass and stuff and taking that away? And that would be the natural place to bring lumber down and I-beams if we use them again for the bridge.
Exactly.
So from an access perspective, that would have to be negotiated anyway.
Yeah.
In other trail systems, even in Toronto, there are local access points that aren't even marked and that don't even turn up on maps of the trail system, that are known only to local pedestrians. They're sort of the neighborhood access to the trail. And maybe that is the kind of thing we could be looking for, so that people aren't drawn to that entrance who are coming newly to Millbrook to use the trail system. It could be a private entrance for the neighborhood type of thing.
Well, but I think just given the issues that we've had there in the past, that we need to, again, make sure that all the proper
Mhm.
procedures are followed. Okay, so I'll send an email out when with some agreeable times on maybe to go out and do that review. Mansion Loop. So again, this is something that's been on our agenda for a number of months, if not years. And I would like to see it as a major initiative once we're able to sort of start doing group work again. I think we've mapped out, we've done the due diligence in terms of what is owned privately and what is owned by the township. We've mapped out the route. I think there's obviously some discussion on, where the bridge would be located, if we were going to go that route. But in terms of the switchback to meet back with the fairgrounds trail, I think that's all been laid out. So it was really just brought up on the agenda to make sure it's still in the forefront of our thoughts, but also to get an agreement on that this is still something that we want to pursue from a committee perspective. Any thoughts on that?
I definitely think it's worth pursuing, Rob. It's a pretty interesting area, and I know that we'd done a little research out in that area, so I think we should definitely take a look at it and see if we can make it happen.
Okay. And obviously, Matt, yeah, that would fall into obviously the master plan work that we are currently reviewing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think part of that work and what we'll endeavor to come back with before, hopefully for the June meeting, and again, my apologies, but is really the sequencing out of these sorts of projects, right? Like, I mean, we've talked about the float bridge, and we've talked about the mansion loop, and we're especially with COVID, we have limited capacity. So prioritizing and then doing the comprehensive review of the property ownership and the boundary lines, et cetera, for this sort of thing is, I think we should just pick one and move forward with it. And my suggestion would be to let's focus on the bridge work because of the grants, or sorry, the donation that we did receive. And then I think we've had good discussions about purposing some of those funds at least towards that project. So if that's going to be priority number one on the big projects list, great. Or if we think Mansion Loop is, we get that done before we go there. I mean, that's some of the thing that we're going to have to decide, and that's going to be captured in that update. And we can have that discussion maybe in June hopefully in June when we get that in front of you guys as a committee. Okay.
Yeah, I think all I would say to that is I think, because of the lack of work that we've been unable to do the last 18 months, I think there's a real feeling to be able to want to tackle some stuff. So certainly I don't want to put the bridge on the back burner, but I'm, not convinced that we would not be able to do two things in coordination with each other. But yeah, let's have those conversations. Again, I just wanted to keep it on the agenda to keep it in the forefront of the committee's minds. Okay, 8.7 MVP contribution to Millbrook Agricultural Society signage. So if you remember last month, we discussed that the fact that the no trespassing signs had been removed by somebody or something at the fairgrounds entrance off Main Street. I was approached by the Agricultural Society about new signage there. I suggested that they get in touch with the people at Maximum Signs, I guess it is, in Pontypool, where we get our signs for a bit more of a permanent solution. They were just using the standard plastic no trespassing signs from the hardware store. So they are now on Illuma panels. Now, the conversation that I had with Ms. Post at the Agricultural Society and what actually got printed on the sign itself was a bit different. the wording, if I remember, is there's two signs. One is security cameras in use, a warning, security cameras in use, which I think is just, well, I don't believe there are any security cameras there, unless they've got them really well hidden. And there's also a security cameras in use warning sign at the entrance that we were just speaking about by the post offices, the post boxes on Ann Street. And then the main sign is something to the effect of, I can look for it on my phone, but something to the effect of private property access to the trails is at your own risk, ! So it was not the sort of soft verbiage that we had originally discussed, but at the end of the day, this is their property and they paid for the signs. And I was told that they needed to put these signs up for liability issues. Obviously in the past, they'd had some concerns around motorized vehicles, dirt bikes, etc., on the property. And that is why they had originally put the cement blocks in at the entrances, which facilitated our request for the removal of those with the post that we installed, etc., etc. So all of that being said, I'm not thrilled with the signage, but it is of course their property. There was a discussion with the Agricultural Society that the signs were $34.95 each plus tax. And if the Millbrook Valley Trails wanted to contribute any monies toward those signs, it would be appreciated from the Agricultural Society, given the fact that they have not had any real revenue for the past year nor this year because of COVID not being able to hold the fair, but it was certainly not expected. So I said, as chair, I would bring it to the group, and that is all I have promised. So I have done my job, and if we want to discuss any possible remuneration to the Millbrook Agricultural Society, we can. If not, we can move on to 8.8.
Hey, Russell, Rob, just to confirm, are they asking for a contribution towards the signage that we're not happy with the language about?
That's correct.
Okay.
But again, this discussion took place before the signs were printed, and I saw this.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
I don't personally have as much of an issue with the language. I get where you're coming from, Rob, but I mean, it's wilderness trail at your own risk. Sounds about right to me, but I get it. It is a bit more aggressive than we would have liked, but I get it. So, but I don't think, I won't make a comment as to whether the committee wants to fiscally support the fair.
Well, and as I made clear to the head of the Agricultural Society, I don't get a vote as chair. All I said was I would bring it up to the committee. Again, we're talking. I think the cost to the Agricultural Society was, probably $100 or less than $100. So we're not talking a huge expenditure on their part, but they are allowing us access to their private property to our trails. So there you go.
Is there opportunity to put up a new sign that we pay for that incorporates their wording, and perhaps we'll cover the cost of that, and if removing their sign is an issue, then perhaps we have it in our budget to also cover the $34 of removing that sign. Like I think it's a great spot to have a small version of our trail map as a reference point, and I'd be happy to see their wording included as a small paragraph instead of like the prime focus within that sign.
Yeah, I mean, that's a conversation we could potentially have. I mean, these signs are fairly new. I'm not sure how minimal they would be to replacing them within a month or two of putting them up, but
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Follis.
I was going to say, Mr. Chairman, it might be, given that they're putting that sign up to deal with their liability issue, if they would be willing to accept a second sign more in line with our wording, I could see how that would be more appropriate. Well, in my opinion, might be more appropriate than asking that they take down the sign that deals with their liability issue. But if we could soften the liability, or if we could soften that sign and make Millbrook Valley Trails appealing, then I think that would be. I'm supportive of what Dave is saying, but I'm not sure whether we should ask them to take down the sign that deals with their liability issue.
Yeah, that's fine. I agree with John. Yeah, a good idea.
I agree with John as well. And for anybody who hasn't seen the sign, I'm not sure if you want me to pull up a picture of it so you can have a look at what we're discussing. I know probably Dave, myself, and I think you've probably seen it, John. I'm not sure if everybody has.
Yeah, I'm looking for it on my phone. Do you have a picture of it right there, John?
Yeah, I will. I'll pull it right up here.
Yeah.
Can you guys see that okay?
There we go.
Yep.
So the post behind it is ours. Well, I mean, theoretically it's ours. We paid for it, and we could put a second sign on that, maybe without asking permission. But yeah, that's the verbiage, which again was a little harsher than it was relayed to me initially.
It doesn't, through you, Mr. Chairman, it doesn't really, it's not even the Millbrook Valley Trail or anything. It's just the trail. So it seems to me that a little more appropriate sign promoting the trail or being positive about the trail, or something green with the Cavan Monaghan logo on it, or whatever we have to put on all our signs, it would make it a little more inviting, perhaps.
Okay, so what's the directive? You want me to go back to the chair of the Agricultural Society and talk about a secondary sign, which we would be responsible for?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, maybe we should have just a conversation when we have that conversation with them, just about access and entrances. But also, I agree with Mr. Follis. I think they're really great to work with. I think you just have to explain the situation so that they understand. I deal with them all the time. They're super. I think you need to have a Millbrook Valley Trail sign on that post for sure, because it is a part of our system, and it's something that we promote and allow for access through that entrance. And that is something we've agreed to with the Fair Board for many, many years. So they probably had to put a sign up that said warning, as Mr. Follis has alluded to, for their insurance. But I think we should have a conversation with them just to potentially put a new sign up there that's more inviting for the Millbrook Valley Trail.
Okay, so why don't I propose this then, Ms. Hurley? Once we have the walkthrough of the potential access on Ann Street, we look at that other access through the fairgrounds, then we can collaborate and have a conversation with them.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, not a problem at all.
Great. Okay, thanks for that, John. All right, everybody good with that? Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. That moves us on to 8.8 GIS Millbrook Valley Trail mapping. As you remember, quite a while ago now, we started this process with Orca and I believe it was a student project with Sir Sanford Fleming GIS students. And so we have this wonderful repository of computerized GIS mapping that we want to utilize as part of our online access to be able to have users use their smartphones and have a full directory of electronic maps, and supplement that information with multimedia, potentially about the history of the trails, flora and fauna, history of the mill, the dam, that sort of thing, etc. And we're going to utilize and combine all of that with our new trailhead signs, which again are in process, and to be able to access that through a QR code on those said trailhead signs and the pamphlets, so that we can access this electronically. But of course, we need all of this information to be accessible in the cloud and organized. And so hopefully that is what Melissa is going to talk to us about now, the progress on that. You're on mute, Ms. Halls.
I just sent her question to.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, so no, I'm not able to speak to everything that I did look through the report that you sent me and it was quite involved. Seems like they did a lot of work for you. Was anybody working with them? Like, this is something if we want to not necessarily discuss it at the meeting today, we can, do it offsite ourselves later, but was there a committee of people that were working with the students? Like, I have the report, but I don't have any knowledge of this type of, I don't even have the expertise of this. And I don't know if somebody within the committee was working with the students and has more of an expertise with it.
Meredith, yeah, maybe Meredith can give you a brief history. She's been mostly involved from that side.
Or through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Melissa, there have been a couple of meetings and discussions with the county of Peterborough, so perhaps I can follow up with you offline because it's a bit of a long background. And the way things were left was Craig was working with the county, so I'm not sure where things got left. So it may end up that we need to follow up with the county, and I can certainly give you the contacts and facilitate that conversation.
So maybe, Melissa, can I jump in here?
Yes.
You're frozen, Yvette, just when you went to jump in.
Maybe we'll wait for Ms. Hurley to come back.
Yeah.
Melissa, you haven't had any discussions with the county at this point?
No, I've spoken with, oh my goodness, I've just lost her name. Tammy
Sigma, yeah.
Yeah, Tammy. And I don't know, like, she was just basically telling us what, the GIS system and what the story maps can do. But it looks to me like, again, I'm the layman here, but going through this report, it seems like the students have already done a lot of that work for you guys. So
yeah, the work is done. The issue really is who's going to host it, whether it was going to be the township or the county. Potentially Orca at some point maybe was involved in that, and how we're going to be able to access it. So you haven't had any discussions with Tammy around that?
no.
It was my understanding that the last conversations were through Meredith and Elena. Is that correct? And Tammy.
And Craig then had taken it on and was sort of leading the charge. So I don't know if there have been any discussions since that first one that I had, because I was not involved, but I think there was some conversations with Craig and Tammy. So
through you, Chairman Jackson, can I just ask a quick question? I can kind of tap in a little bit here. So who is going to host? Do you believe that's where we're at now? If this county is going to host it on their server, or if we're going to host it, is that what you mean by host? Like, who has the bandwidth to, okay, I see heads nodding. Okay. Yeah, okay. So I don't think we knew that part. I think we knew, Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we knew everything up into that was the question we want answered, is who's going to host this? Who's going to have the bandwidth to host this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't think that we knew that, respectfully. Thank you, Meredith, for helping us, because I did come to you, and then we ended up hooking up with Tammy and meeting up with Tammy to do it. But I don't think between Tammy, and I wasn't, to be respectful, she's not here, but I don't believe we knew that was the question that's at hand, who can host it. So is that fair, Melissa? We can kind of take that back to find out who can, oh, Matthew's got his hand up there, but we can find out who can host it.
Yeah. So in my understanding, the county is going to host it. The issue we have locally is deciding who will be our account manager and be the conduit by which we access the maps themselves.
Okay,
which I believe at a staff level, I think we've established Melissa is going to be that individual. So we have made that amount of progress, but the actual providing Melissa with all of the information and getting her integrated into the system to be able to take that on and get up to speed on that has not been done as of yet. So we've made that decision. We're still going through the background work from Alana. Luckily, we're still friends with her, so we can call her to do some of those things. So, but it will be Melissa. We've decided, I believe that's been decided from a staff level, and Yvette's not here, so she can't speak to it. But
she is rebooting. There she is. I was going to say she's rebooting.
You can hear her ears were burning with Matt talking. So
oh no, what are you saying? Stop talking.
Anyways,
you're responsible for everything. Meeting adjourned.
Oh no.
That's as far as we've gotten, Rob, but that's where we're at. And I think between Yvette, Melissa, Cindy, myself, and Meredith, there's probably conversation to be had before we actually have that functioning as of yet. So bear with us, we'll get there.
Okay, so you don't need anything from us at this
No.
point? No, okay.
Meredith, Melissa, you got everything under control?
Done.
Okay, perfect.
So just to recap for myself and for the minutes, so the county's going to host it. Melissa's going to be the representative, and we're going to continue to work with the county to implement the mapping.
I think that's a fair summary.
But if I may, through you, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I know I'm sort of coming in at the back end here.
That's why I did a recap. CAO.
Thank you so much. So there's a little bit to that. Like Melissa and I had that meeting, and Tammy's great to help. She's absolutely fantastic to help. But we do need some assistance on this to take from what you had with Fleming to what could be incorporated, because she doesn't really feel like they do it right from the very beginning, not necessarily incorporating someone else. Like, so they do all of that with their own program. So if there is someone that wants to join us, I hear that Matthew, you're a part of that with us now. We can have that conversation. Did you get
Of
voted
course.
in? I think I heard that when I came on. I'm sorry if I missed
I'm
it.
sure that's what you heard.
I'm sure I heard that. I'm sure I heard that. But I do think that we need to have a conversation with Meredith about the program, just so we have a little understanding, and Tammy's happy to do that with us. But Melissa, this is very different from Melissa and I. We're not the expertise. We're not GIS specialists. And Tammy is definitely willing to work with us, but we need a little bit of collaboration, because we were not fully aware of all this work that took place with Fleming before we met with Tammy. Is that sort of a synopsis, Melissa?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, so you don't need, at this point, you don't need any help from individual committee members.
No, I don't believe so, sir. We'll sort of go through, have that discussion, and I think I need Meredith.
Okay,
We'll report back.
all right.
And
thank
we'll report back. Sorry. Yes.
Okay. 8.9 Ganaraska Conservation Authority Gypsy Moth spraying 2021. I don't know anything about this. Is this you, Cindy?
Came from Maureen, I believe,
Yeah,
through
I
you.
just- am I muted or no? Okay. I just wanted I wanted people to be aware that the Ganaraska Conservation Authority decided to spray this spring for gypsy moth, because the East Forest in the Ganaraska had been severely affected by gypsy moth last summer. And their concern was that if it got hit badly again, that it would affect not just the deciduous trees and perhaps kill them this time around, but also the gypsy moth would go for the conifers. And they were particularly worried about the white pine, because pines don't store energy elsewhere. Sorry.
Okay, so is it just a notification that they're spraying? Is that what we need to be aware of?
Yeah, it's a bacterial spray called Bioprotect BTK. So it's a bacterium. It's produced in Quebec, actually, and they'll be doing aerial spraying likely sometime within the next couple of weeks, because it's
just to
only
speak
good
to
on the
that.
caterpillar.
Sorry, Maureen, just to speak to that, there was a notice on their website. I think it just happened on the weekend, actually.
Okay, all right. And so they, in March, had invited adjacent property owners with sizable canopy to sign on if they were interested, but I don't think people were thinking ahead far enough. You had to apply before the end of March. But we might need to think about that for next year if we find our forests very badly affected. The gentleman who does it for them is a guy named Zimmer. As the summer goes on and we see how badly affected our trees are, we might decide that we want to talk to them about it.
So Maureen, I could actually add to that. I just had a meeting with the Peterborough Regional CAOs, and there is a gypsy moth concern all across our area. It started last year and earlier in 2019. It's quite bad. So we had a meeting last week, and the county hasn't sprayed for many years, but they are considering it potentially. So there is quite a bit of concern out there with regards to gypsy moth getting, I don't know if any of you remember, but probably back maybe 25 years ago, we had a major problem with gypsy moths within our area. So they are really quite concerned about it. So we may have to be considering spraying, but there might be something I can report to you on with the CAOs, because it might be a regional spray. It's getting that bad.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. Okay, so work plan.
For you, Mr. Chair, sorry, can I jump in for 2 seconds? Just about the gypsy moths, it's a huge problem, and there are lots of concerns. There's actually a webinar coming up on June 10th. So if anyone's interested, I can just flip the information about the webinar to Cindy and have that distributed to the group. If you do have a forest property, you may be wanting to know kind of what you can do to manage and what to expect over the next few months.
That'd be great.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more comments on that? Okay, so work plan 2021 updates. So we've talked about, things that need to be done, things that we want to do. As of right now, obviously, we're still in lockdown, not able to do anything. We've opened up a bit, but hopefully we'll hear something. Well, I guess we're going to hear something on the 3rd. What that is, nobody knows, I suppose. But at this point, I think all we can say is we know what needs to be done. We'll be able to do it. At least those things that require 24 boards or less, which is what we have. Currently, it might take some time to ramp up in terms of getting new wood, etc. But I think everybody knows what's happening. It's affecting everybody, of course, and we'll just keep on top of it and make a plan as we are able to and when we know more. So certainly by the June meeting, I certainly hope we'll have a much better idea of what's happening, but nobody knows for sure. And we can make a plan then, or if things move quicker, we can make a plan via email in terms of potentially quick fixes that can be done, etc. So is that okay with everyone? All right, wonderful. So the last item is 8.11, items to be discussed at the next meeting, June 28th.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, can I?
Yeah.
Just to mention that regarding the work plans, as you know, the responsibility regarding liability is the municipality at the end of the day. So if there is assistance, and I know that you probably know this, but if there is assistance and you need some work done that you're concerned about liability, we talked to one about the fabric coming up and could be a tripping hazard. I can send our park staff in to do some remedial work. They do work in teams. They have been working through COVID. So through you, Mr. Chairman, to the committee, if you notice something that needs to be done and you're concerned that you're not going to be able to get out there and it is liability, I will be this year asking for the park staff to walk the Millbrook Valley Trail to participate and be acknowledged. They used to do it on a regular basis. I'm not sure if they've been doing it the last couple of years, but it is important that if you do see something, let us know. If you need us to do something right away instead of waiting for a work day, understanding COVID and limitations that everyone has right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
John, maybe you wanted to reiterate just what you told me there last week in terms of the work that the parks have done thus far.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they've been doing an exceptional job there, Yvette, if you want to pass that along to them, keeping our trails all whippersnipped.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, it's probably the best year I've ever seen. Like normally we're saying, can you please get them out there? Can you please get them out there? And this year, haven't even thought of asking them once because they've already been on top of it. So
we've been asking, Chris and I have been asking to go out there and make sure that we check them. And if there's any assistance we can do, we're definitely here for you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Okay.
Yvette, the M&R trash can again is nearing fullness. It's within 2 inches of the top, so it probably should be emptied this week again.
So
Like-
we empty them every week.
Okay.
Yeah,
I wondered-
so, yeah, every Friday usually, Maureen, but, you know, if you do see them overflowing in between that, by all means, let us know, but we do empty them every week.
Okay.
I've
Excellent.
got them on the rotation now.
Perfect. Thanks.
Question, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Would it be possible at the end of each meeting to have the person or persons who are on duty for checking the trails for the next month to add that to the work plan? So that each time as the month ends, we know who's on call for the next month?
Sure. Can we do that, Ms. Page?
Trying to get my unmute button. Yes, absolutely we can. Do you want me to add it to the agenda under items for next meeting, or do you want me to add it just under the trails report? Another, like, for the following meeting? It's entirely up to you. We've added a little segment here for items for the next meeting. So right there in each of those agendas, we could put next trails report and who's due.
Yeah, I think if we could do that. Sorry, Don, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that'd be great.
Yeah, I think if you add it to this table, that would be great. So are you able to tell us who is responsible for June?
Sorry, Robert, through you, Chairman Jackson. No, I wouldn't add it. You want me to add it to the table or add it to the agenda? Like, here, I'll show you what my thought is.
Yeah, add it to the agenda is fine.
Yeah, just at the end where we have, okay, perfect. That's what I'll do. And yes, I can. Just give me 1 second here. Talk amongst yourselves and I'll quickly find it.
Okay. So that was the items there that Ms. Page had previously showed us is the items for the next discussion, in our next meeting in June. And so,
For you, sorry, Robert, just want to, it's Alex and John Fallis for June 28th meeting.
Ah, thank you. It's a good thing I asked. Appreciate that.
Hmm.
can you pop that table back up, Cindy?
Sure can.
While it's popping up, I wanted to thank John Fallis for doing the tree removal work that he did. That was a help.
Just give me 1 second. That's the wrong one.
It was
What happened?
no problem at all.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Okay.
Give me 1 more second here. Sorry.
So if anybody has any items to add to the agenda, as always, let myself and or Cindy know, and we can add it to the agenda. Cindy likes to get those in about a week before. And then when is the date actually of our next meeting?
June 28th.
It is the 28th, is it?
Correct.
Okay. Is
Is
that
this
gonna
the report you want to back up, Chairman Jackson?
Yes, please. Thank you. Is that going to be a problem for anybody, the 28th? Just because that's the week of the July 1st long weekend. And I just wasn't sure if anybody was going to be on holiday, although I found out that the last day of school is apparently the 28th. So I guess those of us with children will still be around.
We will definitely be here as staff. We acknowledge it on the actual day that it falls,
Okay.
on the Thursday.
Okay. Any questions on that then? No? Okay. Anything else anybody wants to bring up, or can I have a motion for adjournment?
I
May
move
have
to
a-
adjourn.
To adjourn.
To adjourn, seconded by Hillary. All in favor?
All
Right. All right. Thanks very much, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Stay